headline from Media Matters' Alex Kaplan, who looks like a demon straight from hell.
Hi, it's me again, Alex, Chief Demon Researcher Correspondent. For the past 4 years, diehard Trump Republicans have been spreading the big lie that the 2020 election was stolen.
It was a rigged election. It was a rigged election.
Those election deniers have gotten support from a bunch of prominent Republicans.
I think a lot of people who were responsible for that election know that there were rules broken and laws broken.
But there's one major partner you may not have been aware of, the QAnon community. Yes, the people who believe the government and society are run by a cabal of pedophiles who Donald Trump is heroically going to take down.
We're taking back our country, and it's going to be biblical.
No, I'm not joking. Over the past few years, election deniers have started relying more and more on the QAnon community for talking points, research funneling, and coalition building.
We're all a team. We work together, and you know, where we go one, we go all. You know, it's not a Q thing. It's teamwork. There you go.
But to see how this unholy alliance began, we have to go back to 2020.
I don't want to. Trump is still your president!
It's been a rough few years. In the aftermath of the 2020 election, Trump surrounded himself with spokespeople and media personalities who claimed that the election had been stolen. One of those figures was Sidney Powell, an attorney who worked with Trump's campaign. Trump floated at one point as a special counsel for election fraud.
I'm going to release the Kraken.
Powell, who filed lawsuits in numerous states challenging the results of the 2020 election, and has since pleaded guilty in court for her role in trying to overturn Joe Biden's victory in Georgia, have been known to follow and retweet QAnon influencers on social media. And that QAnon crap showed up in her work. In one lawsuit, she invoked a conspiracy theory about watermarked ballots that was based on a post from QAnon's central figure. When she tried going to the Supreme Court to overturn the election, she cited testimony from someone known as Tori. Who is Tori? She is a QAnon influencer who has falsely claimed to have a PhD and an MBA as part of a persistent effort to deceive others. During a rally in December 2020, Powell praised QAnon supporters, referring to them as
digital soldiers,
a term widely embraced by the community. Powell was among a handful of figures who met Trump in the Oval Office to urge him to invoke emergency national security powers, seize voting machines, and disable the primary levers of American democracy. Powell wasn't the only QAnon-friendly figure at that now infamous meeting. Also in attendance was Patrick Byrne, former CEO of Overstock.com, and called one of the most important donors in conservative politics. A few months after the election, Byrne went on a QAnon program and admitted that he had gotten at least some of his talking points from Tori and her supporters.
Do you know what Tori, she has Tori Says as her show? Information that comes up from, say, some grassroots person to Tori, that got to me. We have this system now where the grassroots people find stuff, but it's been immensely valuable in this whole effort.
I know, this is all very dramatic. It's like trying to keep up with the QAnon cinematic universe. But instead of Iron Man, Black Panther, and Captain America, you have people like Powell, Byrne, and Tori. Over the next few years, Byrne continued to be a rising influence, with his organization, the America Project, being a leading funder of Arizona's sham audit of the 2020 election in Maricopa County. He continued to partner with Tori, offering to pay and aid her misinformation campaigns. And he even asked Tori to collaborate with him on quote, election integrity.
Tori, I love you, and I'm going to talk to you about all kinds of ways we could use your advice.
And during all of this, Byrne made clear that he saw QAnon supporters as allies.
On this road that I'm walking, which is to expose the truth about things to the American public, I sure meet a lot of people who got here from a different road called Q.
But the alliance between election deniers and QAnon isn't just about borrowing talking points. It's also about recruitment, helping to bring new election deniers into power. Which brings us to this guy.
November 4th, I went to work. I got a suite across the hall from the Trump attorneys to start investigating the election fraud here in Nevada.
This is Jim Marchant, a former Nevada state legislator turned conspiracy theorist. Marchant lost his 2020 congressional campaign in the state and blamed it on election fraud. Well, it's easier to do that instead of just accepting that you lost, I guess. Afterwards, he announced that he was running for Nevada's Secretary of State, which controls election administration in the state, and he announced a plan to combat election fraud nationally, announcing a coalition of like-minded candidates.
They asked me to put together a coalition of other like-minded Secretary of State candidates. So I got to work, 107 help.
You may have just heard Marchant mention someone named 107. His real name is Wayne Willett, and he's yet another QAnon influencer. He almost never reveals his face, and some of the QAnon community believe he's John F. Kennedy Jr. Wayne Willett is not JFK Jr. Sabin was quite open about his involvement in the coalition to elect election deniers.
I started with Jim Marchant here in Nevada, who has then taken up candidates and helping vet that we got the right players that are inside the coalition. And this coalition of candidates has become a very powerful moving group.
He also helped with recruitment. In Colorado, he influenced a Secretary of State candidate, David Winnie, to drop out of the race.
David, by the way, was running for Secretary of State. We talked privately. He decided to step back from that.
Winnie dropping out made way for Tina Peters, a former Colorado county clerk who was indicted for giving inappropriate access to her county's election systems in order to fuel election fraud claims.
Tina, over the ensuing months, decided to run for Secretary of State. We had talked privately. We talked back at the symposium and other times during the course of the fall.
Later, when Peters lost the Republican primary, she joined a coalition of other local unsuccessful candidates who all claimed election fraud, which Sabin also said he was involved with.
She and a number of other candidates, we had a conclave kind of working through the issues. Tina led the way in getting the money, not just for herself, but for the other candidates to get a hand recount.
And that Colorado coalition was open about its QAnon affiliation.
Where we find fraud in El Paso, we find fraud in Colorado, we find fraud nationwide. Where we go one, we go all.
Sabin claimed to have a weekly call with the National Coalition's candidates.
On Friday mornings, I have a call with all my candidates from around the country.
By the way, Sabin was wearing a number 17 jersey, probably because Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet. Why do I know this stuff? What is wrong with me? Anyways, remember Patrick Byrne, the former Overstock CEO and GOP donor who I mentioned before? He had involvement in this coalition as well, according to Marchant and Byrne himself. And Byrne admitted to meeting with Sabin.
107 is a very interesting guy. I spent some good times with him. He's very smart. He's very helpful.
Most of Sabin's coalition candidates wound up losing that November, but it wasn't the only QAnon election denier partnership around that time, or potentially even the most impactful. For that, we need to talk about an organization called True the Vote.
This election is the most important of our lifetime. Some will stop at nothing to exploit it and seize control of our country. And what do you think they're going to do with that power?
While Sabin was recruiting his army of conspiracist candidates in 2022, another election denial organization called True the Vote released 2,000 Mules, a film that falsely claimed evidence of election fraud in 2020.
Wall-to-wall nonsense. And it would take the rest of this show to debunk the movie's claims point by point.
2,000 Mules was a hit on the right, and during that moment of fame, True the Vote's leadership began appearing on QAnon shows and lauding the abilities of the QAnon community.
I know good research when I see it, and I'm telling you that the open source intelligence being gathered by the Anon community is spectacularly good.
True the Vote even hired QAnon figures to join the organization, including a QAnon influencer who literally had a Q tattooed on his arm.
The authorities coming in to really take over some of the research and some of the ongoing activities that Catherine and True the Vote bring in.
In an interview on a QAnon show, Greg Phillips said that his goal was to collect and turn over voting data to QAnon supporters so they could find evidence of election fraud.
Turning this data over in sort of a pre-scrubbed, cleaned, and packaged format along with the tools for analysis and turning that over to, thousands of Anons and thousands of others out there.
And this wasn't just them shooting off. They actually meant it. That August, True the Vote organized an event it called The Pit, bringing together a bunch of QAnon influencers in an undisclosed location to hear presentations on supposed evidence of election fraud.
Share this broadcast. Tell your friends. We need to get as much eyeballs on this as possible.
The goal of The Pit was to provide QAnon figures with supposed evidence of election fraud.
What our goal was at The Pit was to take what we had done and turn it over to these Anons and just let them have it.
And that's exactly what True the Vote did, telling QAnon influencers at the event to target an election software company called Konnech and asking them, according to one QAnon influencer who attended, to, quote, expose the company.
All you Anons in here, you do what you do. and start connecting dots.
And I'm sure you'll never guess what those QAnon influencers did next.
I actually just got the email not long ago from Catherine and the Pit team with all the data they promised, like all the screenshots, everything.
They got back home on Monday. They've all been digging into Konnech.
Digging into a particular company we were told about. This is our new Dominion.
Now, to be clear, there is no evidence that Konnech has done anything to influence the outcome of an election. This is a conspiracy theory. True the Vote shared the QAnon community's conspiratorial claims about Konnech, calling their supposed research brilliant and great work.
These people are the most amazing patriots. They found some stuff that we had no idea about.
And promising what the Anons found would get Konnech's CEO in trouble.
The Anon community after the Pit dug in. We have over 6,000 focal points, meaning 6,000 points of interest that he's ultimately going to have to answer to.
The panic over Konnech had a ripple effect on the election denial movement. For instance, Marley Hornick, the founder of a New York election denial group, hyped the supposed findings.
I mean, look what the Anons are doing with Konnech. You know, we are this is the citizen intelligence army.
And the head of Fairfax County, Virginia's purported election integrity task force even admitted to sending those QAnon influencers materials to the Fairfax County Office of Elections.
We constructed a whole memo which really just aggregated data from these wonderful researchers. They all work under pseudonyms. These were clearly very professional researchers.
Konnech subsequently faced intense harassment, with its CEO and his family having to flee their home. But the story gets even wilder. Remember when Phillips said he was going to hand over QAnon supporters' research to law enforcement? Well, he claimed to do that as well.
The law enforcement that you're interacting with, how are they receiving the information that the Anons are bringing to them?
It's made a huge difference. We're having conversations with prosecutors and with law enforcement that we haven't had before. We have been back and forth to a particular county in California. We have some huge potential coming out of that.
Did you hear him mention that he was speaking to a county in California? He wasn't kidding. It turned out that an investigator for the LA County DA's office had actually attended the Pit event, and True the Vote claimed that they had multiple interactions with investigators and prosecutors over the summer, along with claiming it worked with the assistant district attorney on the case. Additionally, the LA DA's office apparently collaborated with a man named Nate Kane to assist law enforcement as it reviewed data seized from Konnech.
I was hired by Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office to provide cyber forensic capture in conjunction with a court-authorized search warrant against Eugene Yu and Konnech.
Kane, who has been running for Congress in West Virginia, has not exactly disguised his QAnon support in the past.
My name was dropped 4 times by Q.
Okay.
And one of the things that Q did say was stay in the light. And I do believe that there's some truth to that.
So, in other words, QAnon conspiracy theorists and their research potentially contributed to a real person being indicted and arrested.
You charged with embezzlement in Los Angeles County, California. The district attorney in LA saying the private data of poll workers had been found on Chinese servers.
In response to the indictment, some counties subsequently dropped Konnech for its election administration technology, and Trump himself trumpeted the indictment as supposed evidence for his election fraud claims. But just weeks later, the DA's office dropped the case due to what it said was the, quote, pace of the investigation and the, quote, potential bias in the presentation of evidence. The lead prosecutor on the case, the ADA True the Vote apparently worked with, was put on administrative leave.
LA County will pay $5 million to settle a wrongful arrest lawsuit filed against the district attorney's office after the DA's office charged the owner of an election software company with conspiracy and embezzlement, and then all of a sudden dropped the charges.
I guess where we go one, we go all is actually about wasting LA County residents' tax dollars. Outside of the Konnech saga, the election denial movement has found other uses for the QAnon community. Melody Jennings is the founder of a group that harassed people going to ballot drop boxes leading up to the 2022 midterms, which got her in legal trouble. Jennings met a bunch of QAnon figures when she attended the Pit and subsequently credited them with helping her group and connecting her with others.
Our organization and people around drop boxes wouldn't be happening today without you guys.
In July of 2023, Mike Wendell, the election denier who sells pillows on the side, partnered with QAnon figures to promote an election denial event he was putting together, apparently even paying them to do so via referral codes. and the head of yet another election denial group in Arizona, went on a QAnon channel to urge viewers to flood election officials with spurious records requests.
Absolutely. So number one, public records requests. Learn how to do them. And if you don't know how to do them, email me or reach out to us through our website, and I will be happy to send you a template and walk you through it.
So, what's the takeaway from this extremely cursed conspiracy timeline? It's easy to dismiss QAnon as a bunch of brain-wormed users posting conspiracy theories online at home. But that's not really true anymore. I mean, it is true, but it's more than that as well. JFK Jr. rejects and Q tattoo guys have spent the past few years embedding themselves in the Republican election denial machine. This is a real and frightening partnership that has only grown since the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. And as another election comes, there are signs that this partnership is continuing. Just listen to what Greg Phillips said in the early months of 2024.
Because there are so many Anons, first of all, that are engaged in this exact topic. Remember, in 2020, the spring of 2020 there wasn't a lot of folks around talking to us about election integrity.
And take it from this election denier talking to a QAnon supporter.
We're all a team. We work together, and you know, where we go one, we go all. You know, it's not a Q thing. It's you know, they like to say it's a Q thing. It's not, man. We're all
an thing.
It's teamwork. There you go.
Teamwork. That's what it's become. And for the sake of this country's future, it's a team that we should be worried about going forward.